Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So in this episode we're going to be putting the lower end back together on the 570. I've got the case all ready to go, all cleaned up. You know, the outside's dirty, it's just stained. You know, that could take forever to clean, but what matters is the insides are all clean. So we got this case half here. My other case half is sitting right here on the heater. This is what I do. I put the PTO side case half on the heater, block off the bearings here. I've already put new bearings in it. And what this is doing is warming up the case half to expand the bearing, okay, so we can get the crank in. Now there is a special tool that you can get that will pull the crank through. You can do it that way, or you can do it this way. This is the way I like to do it. And right now, the crank, well, it's not out here because it's in the freezer. Don't tell my wife. But so basically we're getting everything set up. That case half can sit there. This one here is warming up. The crank's in the freezer, and I've got these two blocks here. These are going to act as spacers for this. So let's go in the house, let's get the crankshaft out and get it out here and get the two together. There it is. Yeah, let's get it out. We gotta be quick. Okay, so I gotta be really quick with this, so I'm not gonna be talking much. Here we go. Oh, there we go. She's in. Bada bing, bada boom. Whew. Yeah, you do it fast enough, they go right in. Okay, she's in. All right, so there we go. She's in there. Now, one thing I want to make sure, because I made the mistake, when I put this in, if you watch, my rod was over here. Okay, and it didn't go all the way in. You got to make sure that the rod, when you drop it in, that the rod's over here on the cylinder side. So what actually happened is it didn't go all the way in. Yeah, so see, even I make mistakes, but I got it fixed. Now, what you're going to want to do is, I don't know if this is going to show, but you want to make sure that it goes all the way into your bearings. So, pretty much, let's see here. Okay, sometimes you'll get a big gap here, maybe like a 1/4 inch, because if you don't do it fast enough, and it will go through the first bearing, and then as it goes through the outer bearing, the temperature warms up too much and it just stops. 9 times out of 10 though, it falls right through. But if it does have a little gap there and it's not all the way in, okay, basically all you do is you take like a tube and stick a tube over. So I use an old inner tie rod tool. So you just slip it over like this, nice and careful, okay, and then give it a whack, and that usually pops it the rest of the way down. So now, like I said, if you don't want to do it with the heating and cooling method like I do, you can buy the tool from Polaris, okay, and it's a puller, so it pushes against this, it threads in here, and as you turn it, it pulls the crank through. So if you want to make sure that you do it all the way, and you're a little nervous about the way I did it, that's how you would do it, is use the tool to pull it through. So, all right, and then the bearings, pretty much like I said before, there's a C-clip here. When you change out, I had already done the bearings, I didn't put it on video, but the bearing is just, when you take the C-clip off, press the bearings out, press the new bearings in. Pretty self-explanatory. It's a bearing, a spacer, and a bearing. You just press them in, put the C-clip back in, and you're good to go. So just a little word of advice there. All right. So let's start putting this back together. Okay, so now it's time to put our balance shaft in. Okay, so what I like to do is put a little bit of assembly lube. There we go. And there, a little bit down in here, just to help. Now, what you're gonna have is right here on this. There we go. See that little mark on the tooth? That's your timing mark. And then on your crankshaft, you're gonna have these two marks here. So this little, where is it? This little dot here, not that one, this one, needs to go between those two. Now the tricky part is you can't see how it hits. So all you gotta do is kind of like move your crank around and just kind of like eyeball it. So it should be like right there. And you just kind of, there we go, see? That's it. There's your two dots. Now if you're off, you just pull it out and move one of these a little more, but you just, those three dots there have to go together. Okay, so there's those. 1, 2, 3, so those three together, and then when you turn it, these two should meet. And that's it. Bada bing, bada boom. Counterbalance is in. Okay, so now this side of the case is pretty much ready to go. So now we got to take the other case half and let's get that one prepped and get the two of them put back together. Okay, so pretty much got your case half. Like I said, I forgot to record putting the bearings in, but all you got to do is just press this bearing out, press it in, press this bearing out, press it back in. Now that bearing, crank bearing, it's got a hole in it. See it right there? That's your oil hole. Okay, so when you put your new one in, you're going to want to make sure that your oil hole is basically pointing towards this casting. Okay, so the oil hole goes here, and then you got your piston jet, which is right here. Make sure you clean that out real good. I've seen pistons fail because this jet is plugged and it doesn't squirt up on the bottom of the piston to keep the piston cool. So make sure that's cleaned out. You can always verify that it works by spraying some. There you go. You should have oil dribbling out right here. So that guy's good to go. So now we're going to install our pickup. You can reuse yours, just clean it out, make sure there's no gunk or anything in the screen. Replace the O-ring right there. Okay. And then your next one is your oil bypass valve. Like I showed you in the first video of this series, how to test it. So all I did was just replace the O-ring, cleaned it out, and that guy goes right there. Bam. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do those 5 things on this side, you're good to go. Now what I like to do is before I seal this up forever, we're going to take our, okay, we're going to test fit it just to make sure all the bearings and everything is seated correctly. So now we're going to just take this guy and we're going to fit her. It takes just a little bit of wiggling. There we go. Everything lines up. All our bearings are good. Everything looks good. Your top of your crank here should be about even with your bearing. And then what you can do is just, there we go. See? Perfect. And that little clunking noise is just this, the counterbalance, because there's a piece that's supposed to pull this up to center it. So that will go away, but look at that. Smooth. Okay, let's get this sealed up. Next, we're going to want to put our sealant on. I want to make sure this is all cleaned off. Nice. Okay. And what you're going to want to use is the Ultra Gray Gasket Maker High Torque. This is what you need to seal up the engine. And basically what you're going to want is about a bead that's about half the size of this. Okay. So all I do is I just cut it, and then we go through, and I kind of test it first. I start running my bead. I want to look at it, and it looks about good. So that's should be good right there. Yeah, that's a good size. So now we're just going to go all the way around the case. Okay, you're going to want to make sure that you go around your bolt holes like this. Okay, and keep going all the way around the case. All the way around. And this guy also. So this piece here, this also needs to have RTV. So I'm going to go off camera quick. I'm going to finish this up and I'll show you what it all looks like. Okay, and there we go. So we got a continuous bead. I know I'm not the best, kind of shaky, but down here on the bottom I like to do the double like this, kind of thicken it up because this is where all your oil sits. You're going to want to make sure that you do these two guys. There's that one. Okay. And then continuing along, going around everything, all the way up to your top here. So, looks pretty good. There you go. All right, let's put the top case on. All right, so now before we put the cases back together, I'm going to take some of our assembly lube and just dribble some here on the crank. Okay. I'll just make sure this guy is nice and lubed up when we fire it, and same thing here. Okay, so I'll put some assembly lube on those guys. Make sure your rod is up here. And very carefully get it centered on the crank. There we go. It's on. Now, all we're gonna do is put this bad boy back together. And yeah, we'll go from there. Now, you're gonna have all our bolts here, okay? You're gonna have 2 bolts that are clean. All the rest are gonna be grungy, dirty. See? Look, clean, dirty. Don't put the dirty one inside. The 2 clean ones go inside the motor. So one go there and one goes there. All right. So let's drop all these guys in and then twist them by hand. Make sure they all get started. Okay. Then using your 1/2 inch or 13 mil, I'm using a speed driver. Okay. You don't want to torque these. Not yet. So you're just going to drive them down. That's it. Just till they stop. Okay. That's it. Okay. Because this RTV has to sit for a little bit. I believe it's an hour. Yes. Yeah, it's an hour. That's but you're going to want to tighten all these down, hand tight, and that's it. Let it sit for an hour. Let that RTV do its work. And then once it's sat for an hour, you can torque them down. Okay, so while we're waiting for the RTV to set up, before we torque the case halves together, let's get some stuff put together. Let's start with the oil pump. I've already put some, but I like to do is put a little PS4 in here. It's going to dribble out your oil filter over here out of the holes, but that's okay. Dribble it in. Now, you're going to take your 2 gears, the oil pump, and it's got they got 2 dots. So line those 2 dots up like that, okay? And then you're going to flip it over. Dots should be down here. So basically this one should point, and now you can take your shaft, and it all drops down in there like that. And I just want to put in here real quick, before you put your shaft in, make sure you put your pin there's a little pin that goes through here. You're going to put the pin in, and then you can drop it down in. So your dots are going to be down here. Then you're going to want to take your washer, and stick your washer on. And then you take your oil filter housing, or oil pump housing, stick her on like that. Put your 3 bolts in. And torque to spec. All right, now we're going to take our gear, which is the smaller of the 2 gears. Remember, there was 2 gears here. Okay, so the smaller one, or the one that ends in 199. Okay, 199. It's for the oil pump. We're going to set that. Make sure the out and the numbers are facing you. Okay, now let's get the counterbalance situated. So you're going to want to put your spacer on, beveled side up. The gear marked 198. But before you lock everything down, take your new timing chain, or not timing chain, oil pump drive chain. That's what I do. Put it around your oil pump. Put it in this guy, and then you can rotate the crank a little bit and get that lined up. And then we're going to put our bolt on. And torque to spec. Make sure it works. Perfect, look at that. Working perfect. Okay, so let's get the timing chain on. Basically, just take your new chain, stick it down like this, and push it up through. And get it on our gear. Come on. Get on there. There we go. Takes a little finessing, but there we go. We're going to take this guy, put our chain guide back on, and this is a new used one because remember the other one was chewed up. Here's the new used one. Okay, and we're going to put our new guides in. Basically slip the brown one in here with its bolt, and the all black one goes on this side. With its bolt. And torque those to spec. And there we go. Chain and guides are in. So now we just got to wait a couple more minutes and we'll be ready to torque this down because the RTV is just about done setting up. Alright, so now that it's been just a little over an hour that the RTV's been sitting, we can go ahead and start torquing this down. So basically just using your torque wrench, you're going to go through and start torquing them down to 22 foot-pounds. Now, there's a torque sequence, so you have to follow the torque sequence, go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, till all your bolts are done. Once you've gone through them once, then go through the same torque sequence again and double check that you're at 22 foot-pounds, and you'll be good to go. And that torque sequence is right here. Alright, so now our case is all torqued up nice. And the last thing we got to do is put the oil filter So we're going to put our new O-rings in. Okay, we got our new oil filter on. And basically, she just goes on the side. So take your 3 bolts, put your 3 bolts in it, and tighten it down to torque specs, which I'll, you know, as always, put up here in the top so you all know. So I'm gonna get this all situated, but there you go. So our lower end is done. So that's gonna wrap up this portion, and we're gonna move on to part 3, which is gonna be getting the top of the motor all done. But we're all good. We've got a completed lower end now. So stick around, there's more to come, and come on back for part 3 so we can get the top piece done.